She's a neurodivergent queen, and we stan.
She's neurodivergent and specifically not a minor.
We've decided.
In 2017, Universal Studios announced the birth of a new shared universe of monster movies, bringing their classic horror icons into the contemporary franchise film landscape. But after the critical and financial failure of its first installment, the project was indefinitely abandoned. Now, in 2024, the powers that be have called upon one pulp horror devotee and one snarky film critic to unearth the concept. I'm Dylan Roth.
And I'm Dalton DeShane.
Are you afraid of the dark universe?
Welcome back to Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe, the podcast where we attempt to resurrect Universal Studios' failed cinematic universe of monster movies, one pitch at a time. I'm your beheaded host, Dylan Roth.
And I'm the host that couldn't die, Dalton DeShane.
And together we have been building out the Dark Universe into an ongoing narrative to rival the MCU. If you're just joining us, gosh, it's been quite a ride getting to this point of the show. The most recent episode was a fully produced musical from Dalton.
I actually might be the host that couldn't die because that should have killed me.
Yes.
But somehow I'm still here.
It's been 2 weeks for me since I first heard it, and it's been stuck in my head the whole time. So likely for you all, for whom it's been 2 weeks, if you've been listening in real time, you still got those songs stuck in your head, and that's where they'll stay. In between our own canonical installments, however, we've been inviting our favorite storytellers into our office to plumb the depths of the Universal Pictures catalog for other properties that could potentially be remade to fold into our continuity.
You know, such as Scott Pilgrim versus the World,
yes, our most recent episode, our guest episode.
Or Teen Wolf.
We have the Teen Wolf, which is not a Universal film, but we cheated. We're getting back to our roots with this one, however, for this episode. Our guest this week is a writer, illustrator, and cartoonist known for graphic novels like Real Hero Shit and Tell No Tales, co-created with Sam Maggs. For their political cartoons on the Nib, R.I.P., and for their collaborations with the preeminent actual play shows Critical Role and Dimension 20. Oh, also the voice of Hunter Marin in the Dark Legion episodes of our show.
What they're obviously most famous for.
Yeah, the big thing. Please welcome to the Dark Universe, Kendra Wells.
Hello. Wouldn't it be crazy if my voice just sounded like that, all the time?
Can you turn like a monster voice filter on that make it a bigger hit with the kids? I think.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me when I'm monster. I'm the monster guy. I'm relatable with the kids. I like boba tea and TikTok.
That's perfect. I don't think we even need a filter or anything.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
You just gotta maintain that the whole time.
Perfect. Cut the check.
You're actually doing a voice when you do Hunter. That's your fake voice. The monster voice is the real voice.
Yeah, I'm Frankenstein's monster in according to voice stuff or something.
Thank you for joining us here. We were excited that you picked for your film to pitch us a remake of. We actually went back into the classic Universal Pictures library.
Classic might be a stretch.
Okay, well.
Vintage. The movie that everyone has heard of and definitely seen. The Thing That Couldn't Die.
And that's really easy to find is the other thing about it. It's so easy to find a copy of this movie. It's not like I was frantically looking for one to send both of you about 24 hours ago.
It's like one of those hidden classics, that is like, it's so hidden that like maybe it's not even necessarily a classic.
This is one of those movies that you cannot get digitally at all. As far as I can tell, the only way to get like an actual clean print of this is there is like one of the Universal Vault DVDs, which can be ordered on like Amazon, but I'm pretty sure it's like zero special features. Like they just, burned the movie to a blank disc and mail it to you. Or as Kendra and I watched, the probably more accessible way of getting this is that it was riffed on an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000. And those bootlegs are everywhere.
Yeah, people keep circulating the tapes.
Yes, they do circulate
thank
the
God
tapes.
for it. It's honestly kind of media preservation at this point.
Honestly,
like, not only for MST3K, but for all of the movies they're talking about. Because, it's the only reason that half of these are even around. And it's like this movie in particular is it's definitely a weird one. It starts at like 40 miles an hour, goes to like 120, and then like 5 minutes before the movie ends, it just drops out completely.
Yes,
it's insane.
It just crashes into a tree and the credits roll, basically.
Yeah.
If the first 40 or 50 minutes of this movie were the first 20 minutes of another movie that then had another hour and a half, I think this could potentially be a very good movie.
And maybe that's what we'll do in our pitch. But if anyone out there does want to watch this movie on their own before we talk about it and pitch it, you can find the Mystery Science Theater version on the Internet Archive for free to just stream. You cannot find the regular movie there. Like I said, it is not visible. If you're not sure what Mystery Science Theater is, it's an old TV show where they watch bad movies and make fun of them. So it's actually, I'm glad I watched the Mystery Science Theater version. I don't know about you, Kendra, but it seemed like the preferable way of watching it.
Oh, absolutely. Because I was actually engaged with it the whole time. And like, I feel like I'm being very harsh on this. It's just not a very thrilling, movie, but it helps to have our forefathers of annoying everybody else at home while we're trying to watch a movie, and I'm like desperately making jokes every 3 seconds.
Absolutely. Bill Corbett, come on the show.
Oh my God, Bill Corbett, please come on the show.
We could probably get Bill Corbett on the show.
We fucking love you. Everybody go ahead and post at Bill Corbett on Blue Sky. Make sure he knows about our show.
Yeah, the best way of doing this is to annoy him and make him block us.
Yes.
I think.
That'll get off on a really good foot.
But this is a Universal film, which was rare for Mystery Science Theater, but this was in their sci-fi days when sci-fi was giving them budget. Like, they actually also did Revenge of the Creature, which is the direct sequel to Creature from the Black Lagoon. Probably one of the bigger movies they ever riffed.
Yeah, if nothing else, it allowed them to use like a clip from that in the opening credits.
Yeah.
Which immediately makes it seem more legit.
This movie was also released as a double feature with Horror of Dracula, which is the very first Hammer Dracula film in the U.S. anyway. Because I think it was just called Dracula in the U.K., but it's called Horror of Dracula in the U.S. And it's a good one with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. And this was the B movie to that film, which is funny that we have an actual Universal horror, not classic, paired with a remake of a Universal classic, not by Universal.
It's also funny that there was a double bill where one of the movies had Peter Cushing and the other one has like a weird Peter Cushing doppelganger.
Oh, as who? Which one?
I think that underneath the makeup. No, I think Gideon Drew.
Oh, I could see that. I thought he was a little more Vincent Pricey.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
He was a little Vincent Pricey. Vincent Pricey in like really cakey foundation.
Yes. He had the Vincent Price facial hair from like all of the Roger Corman Poe adaptations,
And the severe unnerving gaze.
Yes.
Well, let's tell our audience, who almost certainly has not seen this film, unless you are on the Are You Afraid of Dylan and Dalton online community, and through some mysterious means, all of you have seen it. We don't know how that happened. Let's tell you what this fucking movie is.
Well, first, actually, Kendra, I'd like to hear how you picked this movie. Was it just that the title sounded cool, or was there something more?
I think I was literally like scrolling down a list of all of the Universal movies and I was like, well, that's a funny name for a movie. Mm-hmm. Like you're giving away the whole gambit here. It's the thing that couldn't die. It's not going to die in this one. I got to see what happens.
Or so you would think.
Or so you'd think. And I'd never heard of it. And it seemed, the poster is really fun. It looks like a sort of headless horseman thing.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what the movie was actually about.
Impossible to predict what this movie is actually about. But also I want to point out that you do have more stamina than our last guest, Rax King, who did a similar thing of just scrolling down the list of Universal movies and stopped at Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So that's as far as she got. You made it back into the 50s. So we commend you for that.
I think I was going alphabetically, so I was probably like 2/3 of the way down the list.
Wow, so you made it all the way past Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and you didn't pick that one. You had no way of knowing.
I commend Rax. I don't think I would have the gumption. I think I have too much attached to that film from my entire personality.
Yeah.
Well, we ended up with a very interesting episode out of that.
And also, I want to make sure we are clear that this is not the movie The Brain That Wouldn't Die.
Yes, which was also a Mystery Science Theater episode.
And also a 1950s science fiction film, but just about a lady's head that they keep in a pan of juice.
Yeah, and to be clear, that's a brain that wouldn't die. But this is a thing that couldn't die.
It's also not The Thing.
No.
It has nothing to do with The Thing.
No relation.
And in fact, the thing that couldn't die is a human person. You know, spoilers, but like it's interesting to frame it as this otherworldly thing when, for all intents and purposes, it's like, well, he's a man.
It would be funny, though, if, like, I don't know which one of these movies came out first, but if they were like, we were going to call it The Head That Couldn't Die, and then they found out that someone else had made The Brain That Wouldn't Die, and they're like, fuck, well, I don't want to, how little can we change it and keep the title?
We'll just objectify him.
Yes, yeah, he's a thing. But yeah, I guess, Kendra, we also wanted to talk a little bit about just your relationship to horror in general, because you were implying before we started recording that maybe that has changed recently.
I mean, so I have famously never seen a movie.
Yes.
There was even a Super Yaki shirt about that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. The lovely people at Super Yaki, I have designed several shirts for their collection of like movie-based ephemera. Just basically saying like, I don't know what movies are. I like really dumb shit. And they humored me.
And a lot of horny ones, if I'm remembering correctly.
A couple of horny ones.
Okay, just a couple.
As is my oeuvre.
Yes.
But it's so I recently have been kind of stepping my toe into it. It like starting with just like the sort of the campy horror stuff, like Lost Boys or
Sure.
what's it? The Chris Sarandon one. Fright Night.
Oh,
yes.
Fright Night and the remake are both fantastic. And then I live with my partner who's much more of a movie buff and much more of a broader in his tastes than I generally am. And he'll occasionally put on a movie and I will either stick around and watch it or go, no, thank you. And then I'll just go play video games or something. But it has helped to, I saw The Blob. That was really fun.
Which Blob? 83?
83? 84?
The 80s Blob fucking rocks.
Yeah, I just rewatched that
really
recently.
fun.
It rocks.
Very anti-government in a fun, unexpected way.
Yeah.
I obviously The Thing is a classic.
Mm-hmm.
I watched like the original Halloween and stuff, but I generally I think my stomach has gotten stronger as I've gotten older anyway, just like being alive in the world that we live in.
Yes.
Just existing in a horrified state in it like 24/7 at this point. I'm like, actually, these movies are not that scary.
Well, and like things like The Blob and The Thing make that stuff fun. Like it's not gore for the sake of like making you feel bad about the world. It is gore that is designed to make you go, ugh, gross, you know?
Right. Well, and the practical effects,
Yes.
that's a huge part that has been a sort of a gateway into horror, is that I love practical effects. And I just think that they just hold up a bazillion times better than any, almost any CG, basically.
Absolutely.
I like the ones that have a little bit of comedy in them or have a little bit of levity or, just go to extremes that aren't necessarily like the most extreme horrifying thing you can watch. Though I do see the merit in that as well. But yeah, I'm dipping my toe into the greasy, grimy gopher guts of horror a little bit.
You like things, you like blobs.
Love the blobs, love the things. Would you believe that I've never seen the Killer Clowns movies?
Well, that does seem up your alley.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm a big clown freak, but I haven't gotten around to that one.
How do you feel about it?
I don't think I ever saw the original, what was it, the 80s?
The Tim Curry,
the Tim Curry
yeah.
miniseries, yeah.
Yeah, and I watched like half of... I literally don't remember if it was It or It 2, which I guess should tell you how engaged
Were they
I was
adults
with it.
or children? Or child, I was going to say. If they were children,
Childs.
it was probably part one.
Okay. Yeah, I saw like half of it, and I just like that Skarsgård is so like I admit, like, of course it's that Pennywise is terrifying, but like it's so funny to me. Like I couldn't take it, like I couldn't get scared of it because I'm like, it's fucking clown. Like I don't know, like he's just like doing a little jig.
He does do some little jigs in that.
Well, you're just immune. You know, you've gone through the exposure therapy of committing to the clown life. Like nothing's gonna be like, clowns can't really do that. I know clowns. I know that that's not really going to happen.
There's an existential horror in clowning that, like, once you open your sort of gaze upon it and it opens its gaze upon you, it's like, it really, I'm like,
Once you look into the deadlights,
he's fine. Yeah, like I've seen worse.
I was just thinking, who do we think is the weirder little guy, Bill Skarsgård or Austin Butler? Because I feel like Austin Butler is trying to kind of come for Bill Skarsgård's thing.
All right, but that's tricky because Austin Butler is more conventionally attractive, and so in a way has a disadvantage at being the weirdest little guy.
I think Bill Skarsgård in Barbarian, Bill Skarsgård is very charming and attractive.
Okay,
I think they're both very handsome.
I used a comparative. I did not disparage Bill Skarsgård. Look, I simply said
Dylan,
that Austin
Butler.
Nobody,
he's not as hot as him right
nobody
now.
fucking considered casting Bill Skarsgård as Elvis Presley. Okay, that's all I'm saying. I think that it's more difficult to be a weird little guy with that, in this case, disadvantage. It's like how, like Brad Pitt has to do his weird character acting stuff. He has to push harder because people want to read him as just a leading man.
So you're saying Austin Butler could do Pennywise, but Bill Skarsgård could not do Elvis?
I will say exactly that, yes.
Okay.
See, I think the operative word here is little guy, because Bill Skarsgård has very elfin features that kind of contribute to his little guyness. He's like 6.5 feet tall, right? Like he's like huge. Whereas Austin Butler has sort of like a stronger, I would agree, like a stronger, more symmetrical looking, bone structure.
He's a bit sturdier.
Yeah, I think he's like a medium guy.
Yeah, okay.
He's like, I would say that they're not quite in the same weight class. I could see Bill Skarsgård and Timothée Chalamet in like a welterweight weird little guy off.
See, I did describe Dune 2 as being twink versus twunk. And so that
we
does
just reverse engineered it.
yeah. They could do a team up. Maybe we need like an Expendables of like little freaks of all different types.
I would love that. Let me write on the twink Expendables. Jesus Christ,
the twink Expendables.
All right. Well, who else do we have?
My entire career is leading to that.
We got to have you back to pitch the twink Expendables on here.
All right. So we'll table that discussion for phase 6 when we get finally to that idea. Let's get to, you mentioned that you like when horror's got a little bit of humor to it. And what we have here is what I'm going to go ahead and call a pretty humorless horror film, especially for a movie called The Thing That Couldn't Die.
Yeah, not a lot of irony in it. It doesn't have a lot of fun with the premise.
No. Kendra, would you like to try to explain the premise of this film to our audience? Yeah.
So it starts with this girl living on her aunt's ranch, just like Star Wars.
That's where the similarities just start.
Yeah. This film is really the missing link between The Wizard of Oz and Star Wars in terms of stories about people on farms living with their aunts.
And this young girl who, I don't know if they ever say her age. They like mention some creepy things about how they like watched her grow up from a little girl to a young woman, and make a lot of like lingering camera shots on her breasts.
Yeah, he says the guy says she was 13 when I went off to college, and so I was guessing like 17 maybe.
Yeah, let's push it. Let's just say she's 18 just to like ease my conscience here.
Sure.
So she's staying with her aunt Flavia on this big ranch, and they like send her out dowsing for water for the ranch.
Yes.
And they don't really like expand on that much. She goes around with a stick and she looks for water. But they're also kind of burying the lead that she has some sort of like supernatural ability as well.
They call her the Water Witch.
Yeah, she apparently has the psychic power to find missing things. but she can only do it under very specific conditions.
She has to have her witching wand.
She has to have her witching wand. She has to be doing it of her own volition, and it has to not be for any kind of personal gain.
Yes. Lots of rules
Yes.
for magic.
Which they really could have set that up like a fairy tale and in a very interesting way. And they just do not even attempt to explain it further than that. There are some other guests at the ranch that also come into play later, which is Linda and Hank. And they're kind of like laughing at her and like not laughing at her, but being like, oh, this crazy young girl who is, she's so kooky with her dowsing wand and shit.
But she gets results before
She
their
does
very
get
eyes.
results.
She does find water, and then she does find someone's missing. She finds Linda's missing watch, and in the process, accidentally finds something sinister.
Well, this one isn't sinister. Well, the timeline's a little weird because they find the watch, and next to the watch is an amulet,
Which the one guy immediately identifies as medieval.
yeah, which it also doesn't really particularly look medieval, but like whatever.
No, but it is convenient.
Like
there's a guy who's their house guest, Gordon, who is actually like part of the Archaeological Society of California, which is handy in this situation.
And he, I guess, is a return visitor to this ranch, or like has been for a while. So he like has watched young Jessica grow up and maybe still thinks of her as sort of a kid sister, except that is like immediately thrown out the window because they're obviously extremely horny for each other.
I do want to point out before we get too far from the beginning that there is a very clear moment towards the beginning of the film where Gordon, the archaeology guy, steps on one of her lines, and they just kept it in the movie.
I was gonna say they like talk over each other like right at the beginning, and they just did not think to go, hey, can we get that one more time?
Yeah, they definitely needed another take because it doesn't feel intentional because he immediately stops and then comes back in with the exact same line.
No, they were experimenting with sort of like the Gerwig Baumbach crosstalk thing. You know, in the script, you'll look and you'll see little slashes where Gordon is supposed to start talking in the middle of Jessica's lines. They're just ahead of their time.
That's the thing. It was naturalism. Yeah.
It's very artistically done, and they never do it again. So it's
that's how
really
you know it's
blink and you miss
intentional.
it.
Yeah. So yeah, they find this like amulet, and he like tells her to wear it because she also thinks everything's evil. She's like constantly saying things are evil.
Yeah.
There's this great bit where apparently when this rarely comes up and again is never paid off, but when she wishes for something with like a strong emotion in her heart, it happens. Like she says, oh, I wish you'd get hit by a tree. And then a branch immediately falls off the tree and hits her friend. And then they say, oh, I did an evil thing. They say it was just the wind. It was an evil wind.
Also, you would think that would end up being like a Chekhov's gun situation where then like that would be the thing that saves the day.
And they tease it. They do a callback to it 10 minutes before the end of the movie, and they never pay it off.
No, they do not. It doesn't end up meaning anything.
Well, and that's what's so confusing because it's like, yes, she can like she can find lost things where it's like, sure, whatever. And then she has all these rules for doing it, which is like, okay, what like that seems to just be your own personal morals, but like sure. But then she gets so mad that Linda and Hank and Flavia want to like sell this supposedly cursed treasure that they found. She gets so mad that she says that she wishes they would all die, and then says, I wishes a tree would fall on you. And then a tree immediately falls on Linda and she is knocked out cold.
Yep.
But like no hard feelings. And they're totally fine by the next scene. And she's like, I guess I was just scared of the tree more than I was hurt. It's like, you got hit in the head.
And it doesn't spark any sort of plot movement, really.
No conflict arises from this.
No, they remain very good friends, like throughout the movie, even though it doesn't appear that they know each other very well.
No one can be mad at Jessica in this film because she's young and beautiful and they'd rather peep on her. Which, although I guess that's getting ahead of ourselves really quick, because then she finds, what is it that leads her to the head? Or the chest.
Well,
I'm sorry.
She doesn't find the chest. She finds the amulet, and then for whatever reason, despite Jessica's warnings, her aunt Flavia decides she's going to dig where the amulet was found.
Oh, okay, so they're just digging next to the tree.
I thought it,
or was it by the well?
Was,
because she told her.
I thought it was the spot that the dowsing rod
Right.
Yeah.
Because
pointed
Jessica
to. They
told them,
assumed it was
"Don't-"
water.
Yeah, said, "Don't dig here; it's evil."
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
based on that, Flavia says, "I should dig here." And
Fuck it, let's ball.
yes,
Well, because Jessica calls it's a real, like boy who cried wolf situation. Jessica's calling the wind evil.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was in this weird situation where Flavia believes in Jessica's powers, but she doesn't believe in Jessica's judgment. She's like, okay,
Poor Jessica.
I have a niece who has the magical power to find things. Now, she found something magically, but she says it's evil. And that's bullshit. So obviously there's
I'm
something
choosing what
here.
to believe here.
I've decided, obviously, I trust that there's something here worth having my two employees start digging. But evil? Oh, I don't think so.
Poor Jessica just has severe undiagnosed anxiety and OCD, and she's like, everything is out to kill me. Everything is evil, and it's telling me it's evil. And you guys need to like follow these things, and I can only use my powers as according to these specific rules. And her family is like, you crazy witch.
Yeah, it's like, what if you knew somebody who had the power of flight, but was like afraid of flying? And there's no evidence, like, if I go up there, I'm just going to fall down. It's like, yeah, but it's never happened that way, right? You just say you're going to crash and fall, but you seem like you're fine. You seem like be able to, no, I can't do it. I can't. I think it's bad to do. It's wrong for me to fly. It's flaunting my privilege to fly with my ability to
She's
fly.
dealing with a lot of
Well, it is.
self-loathing, that no one's helping her with. She's a neurodivergent queen, and we stand.
She's neurodivergent and specifically not a minor.
We've decided.
Flavia has her two ranch hands, Boyd and Mike, dig to find what's down there, and they find an ancient chest that Gordon, the house guest, who happens to be an expert in various archaeological finds in the history of California, identifies this as a 16th century relic, and says, "Don't open it. We want to have the archaeological society here to witness us opening it so they can verify our find and you can get some cash."
Yeah, he says it's going to be more valuable if we don't open it, because if you damage it, it's going to be worth nothing. But as it is, it might be worth more than any gold that's inside it. And so they decide not to open this medieval chest. Oh, and he also decides that it was buried by Sir Francis Drake. He's like, it just has to be. That's the
only time an Englishman has ever stepped foot on the shores of California was in the 1500s. So it could only be Nathan Drake.
That's right. Uncharted's Nathan Drake. This is the treasure from the next Uncharted film.
The franchise that couldn't die. So they bring it back, and then the night gets crazy. Oh, first of all, Jessica's pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That they brought it back because she specifically told them, hey, that's evil. She decides she's going to bed, and Boyd decides to peep on her.
Really long, extended,
while like
silent,
romantic sort of music plays in the score.
Weird.
This is a Henry Mancini score, which probably not coincidentally sounds like every single episode of Star Trek: The Original Series. I get the impression.
Henry Mancini?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Whoa.
So, but yeah, like Boyd sneaks around, poking his head through Jessica's window, and
he's like an older man. He is portrayed as a fully grown, middle-aged man of sorts, and she is repeatedly referred to as a very young girl, and is literally flouncing around in several layers of white tulle.
Yeah.
Although in the peeping scene, what's so good about it is he does peep on her while she's undressing, but she just undresses into equally as much clothing as she was just wearing. He really doesn't get anything out of it.
It actually seems that when she starts getting to a certain state of undress that would obviously, the fact that he's watching her at all is bad. But when she gets to a certain level, he walks away for a while, as if for a minute you think like, oh, I guess he's decided, oh, you can't do that. You've hit the wall. What you've been doing has been fine up to this point. But then later,
I can quit at any time.
Later he comes back, and there's this weird thing that they do with him, because this goes nowhere, right? The only reason for him to do this sort of transgression by horror movie rules that mostly don't exist yet in the late 50s is for us to see that he's kind of bad, And so we don't
And he
feel as
deserves
bad
to
when
die.
he dies. But there's also a bit where like he later, like he in the middle of his enacting the evil scheme that we'll later describe, he like goes to her door and thinks about opening it. And like she's like inside and she's scared, like someone's at my door.
Yeah.
And then he decides not to do it. So it's like, what are we doing? Is it like the thing where
just vaguely terrorizing this girl for no apparent reason at the farm that she like her family owns?
Yeah. And it's like a thing where like, okay, we have to establish that he's a bad guy, but like not so bad. He nobly decides not to break into this woman's bedroom at 2:00 in the morning. So you can feel a little bad when he gets killed.
He's a creep, but he's not a rapist. That's very important to distinguish, you know?
And this is really the only thing that we learn about the character. And like he's unscrupulous, and he demonstrates it in two different ways. One is that he convinces Mike, the other ranch hand, who it's implied has an intellectual, like, or cognitive disability of some kind.
Yes.
That in fact, they're supposed to be guarding the treasure. But he convinces Mike that they actually have permission to go and open the treasure because he needs Mike's incredible brute strength to open it.
And there's that like split second where he creeps into Flavia, the old woman's room, and like draws a knife, and they like show the silhouette of him about to stab her, and then
he uses the knife instead to like jimmy open a drawer.
Yeah, it's the
no, didn't he cut open her purse?
Yeah, he cuts open her purse.
It was something completely insane. I'm like, you just, it's a leather bag.
It's not like it was
and you
locked.
just sliced the entire bottom open and then stole a key out of it. I'm like, why didn't you just take the whole purse?
Yeah, it does feel like almost like a weird postmodern thing where like they keep trying to set up that Boyd is this worst guy ever and then having him do something that's bad, but like slightly less bad than you expect him to do.
I think it's just because they wanted to build tension before we get to the actual thing reveal. And so they were just like, well, we'll keep having it look like Boyd's about to do something bad and then cancel it at the, then he almost immediately.
He ends up being the first person to die.
Interestingly, they kind of set him up as though he's going to be involved with the villain somehow, or as if he's some sort of red herring to the villain. And then he dies before we even get the full reveal.
Maybe we're not giving the movie enough credit, because if you saw a horror movie do this today, you would be like, they're fucking with us. That's so funny, right? Because the expectation is that the audience knows all these rhythms. It's all been studied to death. There are horror film classes. We've all seen Cabin in the Woods, yada, yada, right? Now, this is 1958, right?
Yeah, 58.
I feel like maybe the writer of this movie, this is an era where they're cranking out these B horror movies and thrillers all the time. Maybe this writer is ahead of their time. And actually, this is an attempt to like constantly subvert the expectations of an audience that they think is probably already savvy to the way that these movies work.
Maybe.
But also it's not good. So.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's not done well. The tension never really feels palpable. But we should get to the thing that couldn't die.
Right. Because what's in the box?
Yes.
Kendra, what's in the box?
So no head. Sorry. They open the box, they pry it open, poor Mike pries the whole thing open and sees what appears to be a slightly dissolving Vincent Price, just the head in the box, and it opens its very scary eyes and like mouths something, like murmurs something that we can't hear.
Yeah, it does a lot of mouthing because it doesn't have vocal cords, presumably. Cut above the chords.
As a person who watched this movie without three comedians making fun of it, I have to say that without the immediate artifice of we're here to make fun of this movie, I think that the disembodied head silently mouthing commands while staring into the camera is actually kind of creepy and cool.
Yeah.
I actually like it.
But that's worst
I liked
case.
His performance.
That's a worst case scenario if you're a severed head. You really want to have the vocal. You need those couple inches of neck if you're going to get your head cut off.
Yeah, this is a podcaster's worst nightmare, truly.
It's like maybe implied that he has some sort of like telepathic control over them.
It definitely
but it's
seems
not
that
really
way.
explored. Yeah,
it definitely seems because Mike like immediately just starts following its commands, and kills the peeping cowboy, and it takes the head for a walk.
And the fact that they use the set of different camera tricks that they use to have this disembodied head interact with characters, they're decent. They're not terrible.
They're fun.
Yeah.
No.
He sits on a little rock and he starts talking and stuff. Yeah.
Hold him up to a window where he's just resting on the very lower pane, you know,
Yes. So this is a spooky disembodied head that is alive and that's been in a box for 500 years and can hypnotize people through a vision that Jessica has that is never addressed, but you know, she has psychic powers, so that's fine. It's really just an exposition device. We see what happened, how this head came to be, which is that a sorcerer named Gideon Drew, which is 50% a great name for a sorcerer to have.
Gideon rocks. Awesome. Cool sorcerer name. Drew? I don't know.
Bad.
Not as good.
Sorry to all the Drews out there.
Yes.
It doesn't sound like a name that somebody 400 years ago would have, you know?
Yeah.
But he was apparently a Satan worshiper who was using his hypnotic gaze to corrupt other people in this colonial expedition of California. And so he was beheaded, but in a fucking move that defies any logic if your goal is to remove a supernatural threat whose power is in his head. Rather than simply beheading him, they say you will be cursed to live forever as a head and as a body buried separately, and you can only die once you've been reunited. It's like, all right, so what you've done is you've made your enemy immortal, functionally immortal. You've left the part of him that is dangerous completely intact. And you've also told him how to either end his suffering or never die.
Well, it's kind of like nuclear waste. It's like, this is a problem for future generations. We got what we needed out of it, and someone after we're dead can figure out the rest.
So they bury his head and his body separately.
On like the same acre of land.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like not even in the like next door.
Yeah.
You know, like
the head is
seems
portable. You could put that in a backpack and carry it with you to your next destination.
You could
and
have
then bury
dropped it in the fucking sea on your But you know, it's just silly to me where it's not like a thing where like, oh, Gideon Drew is such a powerful warlock that he can't be killed, and the only way that we can, you know, remove the threat for him is to, like, you know, take him apart and split him up. It's like, no, you've decided to curse him with immortality. You've decided this dangerous warlock should be immortal as part of his punishment.
Also, this is our second movie in a row with a villain named Gideon.
Oh, that's true.
Gideon Graves actually a way better sorcerer name.
Yes.
And Gideon Drew, a better nerd name for Jason Schwartzman. They should have switched those.
No, you're absolutely correct.
So he's now psychically controlling people. He seems to want, his goal, I believe, is to get Jessica to use her witching wand to find his body so that they can be reunited and he can be a whole person again. And it's kind of a winding road to get there. There's sort of a weird love triangle that happens. So Mike kills the peeping cowboy. Then the cops come and immediately shoot Mike. They are the most clueless cops, but they show up like hours later. They're so late getting there.
Well, they are in the middle of nowhere. They make a point to say that that will take a while.
Dylan defending cops.
Yeah, I know. I'm toast.
Cop lover Dylan Roth. Yep.
What if I was about to say something ridiculous like, no, but it was the 50s, so the cops are okay.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. The famously unproblematic.
Famously much less problematic white American cops of the mid-20th century.
Yeah.
Well, they arrive because Flavia calls the cops, and they look and they find Boyd's body, and there's a big stab wound, and they're like, what, like Mike not like him or something? And they're like, well, he treated Mike really poorly. And they're like, I guess Mike did it.
That's enough to shoot him on sight.
That is pretty much an accurate depiction of police work.
Yeah.
Yeah. He does stagger toward them with a very small knife.
Yep.
So as you can see, he had to die immediately.
Typical cops see a potentially mentally disabled man that could be a threat and just resort to violence immediately.
Blow him away right off the bat. Yeah. But in between that, I think perhaps due to the intervention of Mike or something, Mike is also used for another purpose, if I'm not mistaken, which is to draw Linda towards the disembodied head of Gideon Drew and get her under his spell. So
he's like, I'm pretty sure Mike is going to be toast pretty soon. I need a backup here.
Yeah. And it also that helps to clarify that, like, when hypnotized, it's not like here's another dark universe connection, not like the Mad Ghoul, where when you're hypnotized, you are very clearly like sort of a zombie. You have all of the faculties that you ordinarily would have. So when Linda gets hypnotized, she is like, it's basically like she's like a sleeper agent now. Like she behaves normally, except for that she's working for his agenda.
And so now that he's hypnotized Linda, we get this weird love tension thing that we don't have time to go into and doesn't really amount to much.
Has nothing to do with the rest of the story and doesn't go anywhere on its own.
But eventually Jessica does find the body after her vision about how this all came to be. The head is reunited by Linda, I believe. No, by Jessica, because Jessica's been hypnotized at this point. Yeah.
Linda tricks Jessica into looking into Gideon's eyes. And then
before that, our friend Gordon says, Gordon returns with the historian, and they start looking at the chest, and Gordon stops Jessica, who is like very upset and like wants to leave the ranch, and he's like, before you go, can I just borrow the necklace that you found so we can do an imprint of it so we can study? Like, I'm going to give it back to you, but like, we just want to make a mold of it. And so she's like, okay, I trust you. And then she gives him the only thing that is protecting her, which is this amulet. And then that leaves her vulnerable to Gideon's powers. So when Linda hoodwinks her into looking into a hat box with a head in it, she goes evil mode.
There's so much potential for comedy with the places they're hiding the head and carrying and they don't do any of it. They really don't follow up on any of the fun that could have been had.
Yeah, there's also it's strange that they make a point in the beginning of the movie of saying that Jessica's powers only work if she's using them under her own free will. Then they have her get brainwashed, hypnotized by a magician, and then her powers work perfectly for finding the body of Gideon so they can put him back together.
That's right.
I don't know why that detail... This movie really feels like it was written over a drunk weekend, and then they ran out of time. They're like, okay, well... I guess I have enough pages. Let's kill the villain now.
It kind of feels like 3 different screenplays that they put together.
Yeah, like a melodrama about a love triangle on this ranch.
Which, by the way, are there multiple buildings? I couldn't tell where anybody was in relationship to each other.
There's like a cabin and also a house, and they are constantly knocking on doors and running in between them, and it's never really clear what's going on or where they're going or how much time has elapsed.
Yeah, you never see all of the places in one shot or like a person traveling directly from one door to another. So you just go from like a shot of a door to a shot of another door, and it's like, where are these buildings in relationship to each other?
They're just Scooby-Dooing between doors with like a million different houses on the ranch.
It's very strange. So the head is reunited with the body. Gideon comes back to life. He can talk again because he's been reunited with his vocal cords, and he wants to drink everyone's blood. Now, did I miss that being established earlier, or is this just a really late twist?
That's just what Satan worshipers do.
They
drink blood.
I guess so. He
just immediately starts talking about, I'm going to drink all of your blood, one by one.
And then he fucking roasts everybody. He's like, I can't drink your blood because it's too old. I can't drink your blood because it's too alcoholic.
But it's almost
like, damn, dude.
It's almost like someone was like talking about like, hey man, I could fucking kick any of you in the head, right? I got the skills. But I'm not going to kick you in the head because, you're too short. It wouldn't prove anything. And I'm not going to kick you in the head because, I think I'd hurt you too bad. So, but believe me, I could absolutely kick any of you in the head. Yeah, okay? But I'm not going to because you're unworthy of it.
You know that scene in Kung Fu Hustle where he's like, I'm a real tough guy. I'll take out any of you. And like, you, old woman. And the woman immediately beats him. He's like, okay, you, old man. And he's like super jacked. And then he, tries to fight like a child and gets his ass whipped. Same thing.
And that's exactly what happens because he says, I'm going to drink all of your blood. And then someone pulls, I don't even remember who pulls the amulet out, probably Gordon, and throws it at him in the coffin. and he turns to bones. The end. Literally hard cut to credits.
Yeah, well, that's a frequent thing we've run into in a lot of these classic horror movies of a certain, anything like a B-movie era thing, these horror movies that run about 70 minutes. When they're over, they're fucking over.
But it's just crazy. Like, he becomes a real threat for about, like, 3 minutes.
Oh, less. I think we
like
get maybe 90
seconds.
seconds.
Yeah, he gives like a little monologue. They throw the amulet at him. He's bone. Like, how
he goes
like,
ah! He falls into the coffin. The coffin lid closes. They open it to be like, let's make sure he's dead. It's like, oh, he's quite dead. He's a skeleton now.
He's bones.
Yes.
he's bones now.
Also, Gordon was never, he never learned that the amulet had any power over this guy. He was gone half the time.
I guess
he was always on his way to or from getting another character to provide, to be a witness to the archaeological finds. He'd already confirmed these characters who serve no purpose in our story other than, I guess, logically, if you're like a big archaeology buff, you might be thinking, they really should have a second guy to verify this find. Otherwise, this movie about a hypnotic disembodied head would be completely unbelievable.
Really bold of Gideon to talk all that big talk when he knows the amulet's there. Like, he knows the thing that turns him to bones is like in the room.
Right, because he controlled Jessica.
I'd get the fuck out of there and drink someone else's blood. Like, there's no reason for him to stay. Get your head back, beat feet, drive to fucking Portland.
Yeah, not to
drink
mention
some blood there.
that he's now in his body able to like control the movement of his own head and makes eye contact with every other person in the room and hypnotizes no one.
Yes, that's true. He's done hypnotizing.
He's like the least powerful he's ever been as soon as he gets what he wants.
He should have stayed ahead.
Not to mention that he
Quit
could
while
have just
you're
stayed
still
ahead. Then also,
quit while you're still
if
ahead.
he remained just ahead, then he could continue to be the thing that couldn't die instead of becoming reunited with his body, which he knows is the one thing that can kill him.
Yes, he voluntarily becomes the thing that could die, and then immediately does.
If it sounds like
which could have been spun as like he learned a lesson and what he actually wants, it's all a big misunderstanding and he just wanted to finally pass on. But that's not at all what they're doing.
I honestly thought that's
He's
where
just
we were
bones
headed
now.
because the only thing he seems to want is to get himself put back together. So I thought for a minute we were going to reunite and be like, oh, at last I can die. Thank you for putting my body back together.
Yeah.
And then I just want to say this. I do not love this whole sort of cinema sins, find the plot holes type evaluation of cinema.
Yes.
However, we have to do that because that's all there is to talk about in the movie. It's
just plot point to plot point.
It's just plot points. Like even the romantic plot stuff, it's just things happening.
Mm-hmm.
The character motivations never seem terribly clear. The relationships are completely flat. They are only there to serve the idea of, okay, we need to have a conflict here. We need to get this person into that room, yada, yada. The only relationship that seems kind of alive is while Linda is hypnotized, she's kind of sort of trying to seduce Jessica. And obviously she's trying to seduce her to like give her the amulet, but that's where the only actual sexual tension is in the entire film. And then that, for whatever reason, she has to also reject, Linda, while hypnotized, also rejects her fiance, which turns her fiance immediately heel, and he tries to seduce Jessica. And off screen, we have something happen that kind of implies that there was a aggressive advance that he throws her. He says he wants to paint her. She's not comfortable being there. We cut away from that. We cut back, and he's throwing her out of his cabin and throwing her shoes out after her.
Yeah.
And she seems like she's maybe kind of traumatized. We don't ever come back to that.
Never.
What the fuck is going on in this movie?
I've been trying not to quote from the MST3K riff, but in one scene with Gordon and Jessica, I think Mike says, this scene has powerful asexual undertones. And I was like, yes, this whole movie does.
Yeah, it feels like every scene was written independently of every other scene by either different people or the same person over the course of like several years.
Yeah, this script was an exquisite corpse. Everyone wrote a word and then passed it to the person to their right. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was...
Which we'll be doing in phase 4. Are you afraid of...
Like with Hank, he's an artist. He's like painting, it's like that, his whole thing. And when Linda is under the spell, it's not really clear if this is what she actually thinks or if it's just all a big it's just the head's influence or whatever. But she's like, as if I would ever marry an artist, and slaps him across the face.
Yeah.
And he is understandably, I think, very upset by this. But he never has a big hypnosis scene.
Yeah,
so it's implied that he is just drunk and angry and upset for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, his arc never resolves. They just leave him where he is. All that said, the head looks pretty cool. And Kendra is about to pitch a remake for our dark universe of The Thing That Couldn't Die, and we're going to fix all of these problems.
That's right.
That's right. Kendra already knows how to fix every problem we've just listed, and we're going to hear all of those answers right after this break.
Hi, I'm Dylan Roth, and if you've been within the sound of my voice for the past few months, then you know that I'm currently obsessed with professional wrestling. Being the irrepressible creative dynamo that I am, I naturally started looking for a way to funnel that obsession into some sort of project. Ideally, something that's extremely time-consuming, difficult to market, and legally dubious. To that end, I have launched a new YouTube series called Future Endeavors, which I will now attempt to describe to you in under 30 seconds. Future Endeavors is a scripted series in which I play Quentin QR Reese, a guy who talks about pro wrestling on YouTube. Except the events that he's reviewing and commenting on aren't real. Or, they're less real than pro wrestling. They're storylines that I've concocted and brought to life using the WWE video games, as well as my stunning Triple H impression.
The game is eternal.
But there's one more twist. QR doesn't know it, but there's something terribly wrong in the world of pro wrestling. Something that is scratching against the barrier between the fiction of wrestling and the real world and threatening to corrupt the souls of all mankind. Also, it's funny, I hope. So tune into Future Endeavors, which updates monthly on my new YouTube channel, and join the Are You Afraid of Dylan and Dalton Patreon for access to bonus episodes. Thanks, and I'll see you in the ring. Welcome back to Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? We have just been talking about The Thing That Couldn't Die with our guest, artist, writer, illustrator, cartoonist, general bon vivant, Kendra Wells. And
the thing that it turns out could very easily die.
Oh, yeah. Extremely
really quickly.
Extremely killable thing.
Yes.
And now we are about to hear Kendra's pitch for a Dark Universe remake of that 1958 quote classic, end of quote. Kendra, what do you got for us?
I didn't bother to give it a new title because this one is so incongruous anyway. I'm like, fuck it. Let's just keep it exactly where that is.
Oh, and it's a killer title.
Oh, yeah. The best thing about it, arguably.
Yeah.
The Thing That Couldn't Die. Now, this isn't a huge departure from the movie that we watched, except I have reskinned it and edited it the way that a person with a funtioning sense of the art of cinema and the edit, just the art of script writing, even at like a 20% capacity would do.
Someone with a sense of cause and effect, maybe.
Yes,
like
precisely.
Maybe someone who just wasn't like. It's fucked up that we're just besmirching the skills of this Hollywood screenwriter from 1958, apparently adapting his own short story, The Water Witch.
I'm so sorry, David Duncan.
Yeah.
Now that explains a lot also, because it just means that he's not a very good writer. I'm sorry to this man.
Okay, but we do have to give some credit here to having an important role in the history of monster movies. He wrote the English dub script for Rodan. which I think is a pretty cool feather to have in one's cap.
He also wrote 2 other films that were riffed on Mystery Science Theater.
Wow.
Monster on Campus and The Leech Woman.
So really, while we can, talk shit on his skills all we want, he inspired other artists to make work that in turn inspired us. So isn't that beautiful?
That's true. And then you know what? The chain keeps the old circle of life, or the tree of creativity continues to blossom here on the show, because now we get your version of the story.
That's right. And it's set in 2008.
Okay. Why 2008?
Because the economy has collapsed.
Okay.
It's the housing market has collapsed from under, everyone. The country is looking very bleak. And I don't know, should I just hop into the sort of, the little pitch here that I've written?
Yeah. Give us what you got.
So Jessica Burns, played by Ayo Edebiri,
okay,
lives on a ranch with her aunt Flavia, Octavia Spencer, and Flavia's 2 hired hands, the conniving Boyd, played by Robert Pattinson, and the gentle Mike, who's played by Cooper Andrews. Fiancés Hank, Kieran Culkin, and Linda, Stephanie Sue, guests at the ranch alongside Gordon, Nicholas Holt, who has come to the ranch many times and watched Jessica grow into a young woman. It is Gordon who brings Julian, John Leguizamo, a historian, to the ranch to appraise the strange artifacts that Jessica has found. It is the early 2000s. The housing market has collapsed, and the recent college grad, Jessica, has decided to work on her aunt's ranch rather than worry about finding a job just yet. She's been visiting every summer anyway. She might as well just stick around. Flavia loves to show off her niece, especially her party trick. Jessica uses willow branches as dowsing rods to find water around the ranch. Jessica puts up with it, but wishes her aunt, and the cute guy Gordon, who visits every summer, would treat her like a proper adult and stop acting like she's a nutty little girl. However, when Linda loses her engagement ring while horseback riding with Hank, Jessica is able to pinpoint exactly where it fell off. Linda becomes fast friends with Jessica after this, despite seeming much more worldly next to the innocent young girl. Next to the watch is an antique amulet, inscribed with a fleur-de-lis, which Gordon retrieves and gives to Jessica by way of an apology for doubting her weird powers. The handymen dig at the spot that Jessica has doused, but instead of finding water, they find an ancient-looking chest locked up tight. Flavia, Hank, and Linda immediately celebrate, thinking they've found buried treasure that can save the ranch and their family from destitution. But Jessica distrusts it. Gordon, a history grad student at the college in the city, says his mentor, Dr. Julian Ash, might be able to appraise it for its worth and to not open it until he can bring him back. The others are impatient, but agree to leave it alone until he comes back. Later that night, however, Boyd is scheming. He had planned to leave this small town to become a big shot Wall Street guy, but before he could make his fortune, the market crashed, and now he's stuck here digging water pits for that awful Flavia and the moronic Mike. Boyd convinces Mike to prise open the crate with his bare hands while the others are asleep so they can steal some off the top. Mike opens it to discover that there is a living, decaying head of the evil magician Gideon Drew, played by Willem Dafoe, obviously.
Yes!
Yep.
Boyd insults Mike and shouts at him to get out of the way so he can get to the treasure, but Mike is frozen still. He is staring at the decapitated head in its eyes, not feeling the rain of Boyd's fists against his back. Gideon Drew murmurs something only he can hear, and with that, Mike turns and attacks Boyd, killing him in a hypnotized fervor. Flavia, hearing the screams, calls the police from her bedside phone. Gordon is on the doorstep of his mentor, Julian Ash, who is wearing a robe and looking exhausted. Gordon is visibly excited as he tells him about the chest, but he trails off as he sees police cars screaming up the road toward Flavia's ranch. Julian senses something is amiss and offers to drive Gordon back to the ranch and says he'll look at the chest once they are certain everything is okay. The police search for Mike but cannot find him. The group is shocked at the death of the handyman, and Jessica begins to have a panic attack, increasingly convinced they've done something by digging up the chest. She flees to stay in the guest cabin with Linda, away from the house with the cursed object. Hank says goodnight to Linda, being very sweet and promising that the police have it under control. As Jessica sleeps, however, Mike, under the influence of the cursed head, ensnares Linda with the power, while Jessica remains asleep and protected by the amulet. Jessica dreams of, what's his name? I literally wrote Nathan Drake again.
Sir Francis Drake.
Sir Francis Drake, arriving to the land in the 1500s and burying the evil wizard beheaded from his body so that he may not rise again to true power. While she dreams, Julian and Gordon inspect the chest for clues. The inscription in metal says that the body is also buried somewhere on the property. Meanwhile, Mike attacks the police and is shot dead.
Yep. Who plays Mike again?
That is oh my God, Cooper Andrews.
Who is Cooper Andrews?
He played the dad in the Shazam movie.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw that.
I just
No,
realized
big
that
and
my
handsome.
browser.
He's a big handsome guy. He's got a very sweet smile.
Yeah.
Okay, I can definitely see this. Yeah, what a sweetheart.
He's a sweetheart. Justice for fucking Mike.
We will be sad when he is shot and killed.
Yeah, we're gonna play this for much more tragedy. We want to be on Mike's side. Yeah.
Yes. I think that it needs to be clear that, this is the tension is ratcheting up here. I think the beginning of this story and like the way that I'm approaching it is with, like a little bit of like updated for sort of modern sensibilities and modern humor, but actually treating it like something is going awry rather than
because so far it really is like the description that you're giving is all like very close to what we saw in the movie. It's just you've sprinkled in little things like character motivations and
well, it almost
connecting anything together.
Yeah,
it almost reminds me of isn't it the Sam Raimi movie A Simple Plan? Right? Which is about the four friends who find treasure in the woods and they say they're going to like split it up, but like jealousy sort of like basically this whole friend group starts to unravel. They start to like kill each other over this treasure kind of thing. It almost feels like that kind of thing of like, there's all this tension under the surface among this group of people. And then finding this head sort of all of a sudden brings it to the surface and everything starts collapsing. And there's sort of just this dread of like, a lot of like innocent people who are just like at this ranch together. And now everyone's dying one by one overnight as all this stuff comes to a head. It feels like that sort of runaway train kind of thing that the movie absolutely does not have.
Right. And a lot of the character actions are like, just like, yeah, it makes sense that Mike would want to kill Boyd if Boyd is presented as this really abusive dickhead guy to him who's constantly talking down to him and manipulating him. It's like, okay, yeah, there's but is that, Gideon Drew controlling him and making him do evil things? Or is it supposed to be motivated by some like deeper desire within him? It's like it's interesting and it's never actually addressed in any meaningful way.
Yeah, and the way that you've chosen the time period for this as a time where everybody is experiencing a sort of shock to their system in terms of like thinking about their future and their stability, right? Like not that there haven't always been at all times lots of people who are paycheck to paycheck and wondering how they're going to make ends meet. But this is a period of time where like across various sort of economic strata, all of a sudden it feels like, oh shit, we might be looking at the next Great Depression. It's likely to become dog eat dog at any second if it's not already. So creating this atmosphere where you've because the movie's kind of depression coded to me. Maybe it's just it's on a ranch, and because we have two ranch hands, one of whom has some sort of cognitive disability thing, it makes me think of Mice and Men, I guess.
Yeah, very much so. And it's also like I don't know. A lot of what I saw was, at its core, it's these people who are in a small isolated spot, and they're all desperate. Flavia mentions that she wants to save the ranch. She wants to sell this so of course people are like going to be champing at the bit to open up this treasure, even though it's like, yes, it comes off as greedy or when Boyd does it, it's bad, but
well, yeah, because we don't establish like what anybody else's situation is. Like the only thing that entitles Flavia to this fortune that she's going to get is the fact that she owns this land that happened to have it buried underneath. She doesn't even dig it up. In fact, Mike digs it up.
Right.
But,
and Jessica found it. So it's like, it's an interesting chain of events where it's like, this could, this seems like a good transition here, but Dylan asked me to think about like what director I would imagine making this. And it's Rian Johnson. It's like full Knives Out.
Yeah,
absolutely. That makes sense. Yeah.
I think he would do a really good job with like the characterization of these people and their motivations. And like, he's really good with these sort of Glass Onion style, like trapped in a place together.
And he also can strike that tone between, like, I think he could lean into some of the campier elements of it and have a lot of fun with them while still keeping all the character relationships very serious and real. And so we get sort of the horror as all these dynamics are coming to a head, pun intended. But then also get some of the fun of, like, hey, they're carrying a severed head around that's hypnotizing people, you know, like he can strike that balance, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's one of my favorite things with, like, the types of the horror movies that I end up liking. It ends up being like humor works because you care about the situations and you can find the humor in what's happening. Yeah. And in that you care about the characters, and horror works when you care about the characters enough to give a shit when they die.
Yes.
You know, so it's like, it's an interesting, like, you have to make them care in both states. So you might as well have both horror and humor live alongside each other.
I think that a great embodiment, again, no pun intended here, of that idea of having to balance the comedy and horror is your choice to play the disembodied head. Because the idea that it's Willem Dafoe's disembodied head is, for whatever reason, it's just inherently funny that that's Willem Dafoe's head.
I'm also Willem picturing Dafoe, him with the makeup from Poor Things.
Right. But the thing is that if you actually set this stage properly, Willem Dafoe, despite the sort of disadvantage to being scary that people will think it's funny that it's his disembodied head, he has the ability to turn that around and make it really scary on a dime.
Yeah.
It can really do both.
Yeah, my inspiration for that casting him specifically was his role in The Northman.
Yeah.
Where it's like he's a terrifying man witch, you know, like, and it's you laugh because you're unnerved, but, like, it's a very, like, he plays intensity very well.
Oh, right. Like, The Lighthouse has that same kind of energy where, like, his intensity is simultaneously, like, you look, sometimes it's, like, played for laughs and it's so funny. And then you could change the sound design of the scene even, or just, or put a scene in isolation and it becomes terrifying. Or, you know, obviously just whenever Robert Eggers decides, okay, we're flipping the switch and this is a horror movie now.
Yeah.
So I think, this is, I think, all very terrific. I think you still have some more. I
have
more plot to go
we're sort of in the intermission here.
Before we go, can you remind me who plays Jessica again?
Jessica's played by Ayo Edebiri.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I think it's pronounced. I know people generally get it wrong, and I think I actually heard her say Ayo Edebiri.
Ayo Edebiri? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh.
As I had said Ayo Edebiri as well, and then I think when I went to go see Bottoms at Alamo, there was a little intro, and it was like, "Hi, I'm Rachel Sennett, and I'm Ayo Edebiri," and I'm like, "Okay, remember that, Ayo Edebiri." If I'm still wrong,
okay.
It's going to be funny if you're still wrong.
If I'm still wrong, it might be.
And I'm going to keep it in the episode.
Yes, you have to, yes.
We'll fix it in post.
But I think we had her earmarked for something, but we never
what
actually
did we cast her for?
Well, I have it in a chart that Merritt K's Black Cat episode referred to a character that, and I think that it didn't even make the cut of the episode, that we might have cast Ayo Edebiri because I didn't put it on the title card. So
we'll have to go back. But all of your cast, you cast everybody, and I don't think there are any overlaps other than maybe Ayo.
Yeah, the fact that you named a bunch of terrific actors who are really big now and all, like,
multiple
really good
people from The Menu,
character actors, people who are in The Menu, and they're all up for grabs. Terrific.
Thank you.
And all people that should have been in the Dark Universe by now.
Like, how have we not put fucking Willem Dafoe in our universe already?
How
Considering the number of old white guys that we have ended up adding to this universe, how do we not have and then we got Nicholas Hoult in the mix.
Mm-hmm. He's another little freak. He can be in the Twink Expendables.
Absolutely.
I would. He's probably going to be in the Twunks.
I would say
he's going to be
in the Twunk area.
That's why I think it should just be the Freak Expendables, right? Like, we got to have all different
David
sizes.
Dastmalchian in the mix.
Ooh, yeah, he belongs in the Freak Expendables.
Yeah, I loved. I am a not a stan, but I'm a Nicholas Hoult defender because I loved him in Warm Bodies, and I really liked him in Renfield.
Oh, I like him even in things I think are bad.
Of course,
and of course, Fury Road.
And then obviously Fury Road.
Fury
Road. But I like him with hair and eyebrows as well.
All right. So what happens next in Kendra Wells is the thing that couldn't die.
So very sad. Mike attacks the police and everyone is shocked.
Mm-hmm.
But as the cops sort of assess the situation, everyone seems to agree that it seems like this is kind of an open and shut case of Mike freaking out and killing Boyd due to his abuse of the big guy.
Mm-hmm.
Mystery is solved. Everyone returns to bed. Thinking she is acting strangely, Hank speaks to Linda and is shocked when she laughs at him. She is suddenly saying things about how she could never marry him, that he is a poor artist, and that she's calling off the wedding. Hank, unaware that she's being influenced by the curse, returns to their room and destroys the paintings he made of her, drinking heavily. In the morning, Flavia and the others ask Jessica to help locate the other treasure, and she refuses, instead packing her things and meaning to run away back to town. Before she goes, Gordon stops her, asking if he might borrow her fleur-de-lis and make a mold of it so he and Julian can further study it. She reluctantly agrees, trusting Gordon, and gives him the necklace. Linda follows her back to the guest house to watch her pack, staring intently when she realizes Jessica is no longer wearing her protective amulet. She pulls Jessica into her closet, gay, saying that she wants to give her something before she goes, only to reveal the severed head of Gideon Drew that meets her gaze and immediately takes her under his spell. The two women, both possessed now, abruptly tell the others that they will, in fact, go and find to dig up the other treasure. Jessica's whole demeanor has changed from sweet, nervous girl to beguiling temptress. Gordon is confused, but doesn't question it because it's hot. They succeed in digging up the body, and the evil women place the head back in its rightful place. Gideon springs to life and threatens the others, looking for a viable blood source to regain his powers. I'm kind of imagining it as like the only thing that will truly bring him back to life and render him invulnerable. Is drinking a bunch of blood or something. Well, I don't know.
I love that, because the thing about a lot of the problems this movie has is they're not huge fixes. Like, you don't need to go like we've talked, I think, on this podcast, or at least in person, you and I, Dylan, about the one-line fixes where like sometimes when there's a problem with the screenplay, you think you have to like rewrite everything to make it work, when sometimes you just need to be like, oh yeah, the blood is what he needs to be back at full power. And you go, great, the end. It's explained. We're done. That's enough.
He's already an evil wizard who was dead a second ago. Like, of course he drinks blood.
Yeah.
Great. He drinks blood, yada, yada. He's roasting everybody. He Goldilockses himself through his captive audience and lands on Jessica, of course, whose powers lead her to the one item capable of destroying Gideon, the fleur-de-lis amulet. He takes Jessica in his arms, and when suddenly he recoils, Gordon remembered the amulet in his pocket and brings it forth, calling to Jessica to take it. She awakens, desperately reaching for the item in Gordon's hand, when in a burst of power, she knocks the still fragile body of Gideon aside. She places the necklace back around her neck and palms his face like a basketball, the power of the amulet causing his body to burn and dissolve away from under it. Linda shakes off her possession and falls into Hank's arms, weeping and begging for forgiveness. They embrace, realizing the influence of Gideon Drew drove them apart, and Hank apologizes for destroying the portrait of her, but says that he's been inspired to make a new piece. The movie ends with the group burying the coffin with the fleur-de-lis embedded in the remains of Gideon, trapped inside. By way of a headstone, Jessica leaves only a willow branch in the shape of a Y, her dowsing rod. As Linda asks Hank what the painting is going to be, he says, "Are you familiar with Artemisia Gentileschi?" Who famously painted a portrait of Judith beheading Holofernes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, we are.
Sorry.
Okay, that's
art school joke.
Both two dumbasses just waiting, like, and that is.
No, all of my SVA apparel is all hand-me-downs from my wife. I don't know anything.
Jenna
about
would
art.
have laughed. Okay,
I will play this clip for Jenna, and she will laugh.
I love this because I think this is our first pitch where it's just kind of like, what if we did this movie but good?
Yeah, and I was kind of hoping that would be your approach, Kendra, because I mentioned this, I think, to Dalton. There was a long stretch at this movie where I was watching it, and I was not watching it with the Mystery Science Theater commentary, where I thought, hey, maybe this movie is good. And then it reaches a certain point where suddenly it's like, okay, we got to tie up all these threads. Let's not...
Yeah, the pieces are there. Like, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, and as long as you tie them together with, like, character motivation and this sort of like I think this movie can feel like a sort of emotional runaway train.
Really, what's crazy, and it's like these very important little things that you've changed. One is that you have established, and again, it's fun, it's easy for us to do because we get to play out an imaginary movie in our heads, but you've established, hey, here's thematically what the movie might be about. Because so far as I can tell, in my one brief viewing of this film, this movie as it exists is about nothing.
It's about a thing that couldn't die.
Yeah.
It's barely over an hour long.
Yes.
It's like 2 acts and then 10 minutes of act 3.
Yeah.
But it feels like the track just ran out from under them.
Yeah, but you've introduced the idea of like what the theme of the piece could be. And then you've basically just made a version of the exact same plot where everyone does things on purpose. Instead of things just happening. And that's all. And that's all it really takes.
Although, okay, so here's my studio note. I do think that while we're sort of redoing it, though, we should take the opportunity to beef up Act 3. We talk a lot about on our show having an Act 3 to Act 3. Like you set up your Act 3 and then you push it even further. And I think we've got this thing where Gideon comes back. We know now why he wants to drink blood. I think we should have him drink someone's blood. I think we should like extend Act 3 so that we do raise the body count a little bit and make the stakes a little higher. Also, so then, it doesn't feel like the thing where like, oh, he came alive and then is like immediately killed.
Right.
I'd like to see Gideon like demonstrate the breadth of a tease of the full breadth of his power so that we know what kind of threat that he is. And maybe he gets loose and they have to stop him before he gets to like maybe he makes it as far as the main street of the nearest town.
Or maybe like it's the kind of thing where they need to stop him from regaining full power, right? But eventually he kills like a couple people and he gets enough blood that like he's doing like super. It's kind of like the end of a lot of like, I feel like 80s horror movies where like the monster is going crazy. Like the wind is whipping around. There's magical energy everywhere. He's unstoppable. He's laughing maniacally. And somehow Jessica is able to use what power, maybe her wishing power, right? The wishing power that never comes to a head in the original. She's able to use that to find like some loophole through his, omnipotent magic to get him with the amulet and depower him and like kill him right when he was about to be at his most powerful, right?
Okay. Here's my pitch.
Yes.
So they talk on and on about how it's this fleur-de-lis amulet, and it's like it stands for like chastity, it stands for purity, and it stands for the hymens or something. It's like very, very like extremely heavy-handedly about like virginity or whatever.
Yes.
So here's where, I feel like since Mike died, was an expendable pawn of Gideon's, it makes sense that that Linda would be either at risk of becoming an expendable pawn of his, or if we want to kill her off, it's sad. I like Linda, but it would make sense for him to kill her off.
Yeah.
And then, Gordon escapes into town, and maybe there is a big French church in town that has like a big fleur-de-lis, like what do you call it? Weather vane on it. And you see it like shaking ominously in the wind at one point. And he, I don't know, scales the church like King Kong and then gets stabbed through it or something. I've run out of gas.
I have something. I have something. So we establish in the original movie, we were talking about how Jessica's powers only work if it's something that she really wants, right? Like that it's something that very pure that her heart wants and like a fit of emotion. So throughout his rampage, Gideon's rampage, I think we keep Jessica hypnotized. She's still in his trance, right? And maybe we kill off Linda. So Jessica is his only sort of hypnotizee at this point. And when he goes sort of Super Saiyan mode, magic near this church, right? Maybe he like floats up and he's like levitating near the church or something. And Gordon comes up to Jessica, who's like fully catatonic, and is like, Jessica, like, I know you're in there. You need to listen to me. I know what your heart wants. I know this isn't you. This isn't what you really want. This is just his control. I need you to wish, I need you to wish for something. something, and like just like at the last second her eyes just open and the weather vane from all the wind snaps off the top of the church and flies through and like goes like through him.
Oh yeah, it's got to impale him.
Yeah, like impales him like straight through.
Can I punch this up just a tiny bit?
Yeah.
The weather vane falls and is heading towards Gordon, and that snaps her desire to protect Gordon.
Yeah,
pushes the fleur-de-lis away, and then it stabs Gideon through the chest.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because that's
then we can tie the sort of if we're going to play this as more of like of a love story. You mentioned that she wants in your summary that Jessica wants Gordon to take her more seriously as an adult.
Yes.
and so
their age gap is much less weird in my version.
Great.
It's normal.
Love to hear that.
But yeah, so the idea that we can actually like make that one thing that she wants, that we establish something that she desires in the movie, in the beginning of the movie, something that ends up being part of the payoff in the climax. I like that. Now
we could also do the gay version, which is where Gordon is actually the one that's killed off earlier, and she does this to protect Linda.
I love that. It's completely interchangeable, which is what bisexuality is.
Well, and you kind of then get that nice twist of like, oh, we thought Gordon was the main character.
Yeah.
But then he dies at the top of Act 3, and now it's like, oh, now we don't know what's going to happen.
I simply can't believe that on this podcast we are pitching a gay remake of something.
Yes, we never do that.
But it's funny because when you mentioned that it was like this really, like all of the sexy scenes were with the two of them, it didn't even occur to me that this was like, I just assumed it was completely unintentional.
Well, I came in locked and loaded because my first thing, when there's the scene where the two of them, before Linda is hypnotized, Jessica is uncomfortable staying in the house when the chest is there, so she goes to stay in the cabin or whatever, and she sleeps in bed with Linda, and it feels very friendly or sisterly. There's no sexual tension about it, and I've got my hackles up because I know how things tend to get on this show and in our community, be like, you know what? It's kind of okay that we not have to sexualize every interaction any two characters have. Can we accept that it's okay for two people who are not sexually attracted to each other to just like sleep in a bed together and it doesn't have to be weird?
No.
And then as soon as Linda gets hypnotized, the entire tone changes. Like, no, this is very gay.
This is gay.
This is absolutely gay, and I can't argue against it.
I feel like it would make sense too if it's if you take Gideon's possession as a kind of unearthing of hidden desires.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why Linda rejects Hank out of hand. Is like, I could never marry you. And like, maybe she says it's because he's an artist, but we could very much change it to just be like, you're a man.
That's perfect. Yeah, because that's all teed up with the Mike stuff, right? That like maybe he's hypnotized, or maybe he's just finally getting revenge on Boyd. And yeah, maybe it's just because Linda's hypnotized, or maybe it's because she's actually into Jessica, and then Jessica's hypnotized, and maybe she's realizing she's into Linda.
Well, this also allows us to play with something interesting about making Gideon, first of all, like less of a black and white evil, like, okay, this guy represents evil and therefore he's bad. Like, what does he want? Right. And also we can play with this sort of themes where like we're in this place where people are starting to get more concerned for themselves, right? Because the security they think they have, when security gets shattered, sometimes it can damage community because people start thinking, like there's the whole zombie movie thing where it's like suddenly, you remove the comfort of civilization and people turn into animals and they turn each other. I think we have an interesting way to study the idea of personal desires as both a thing that can be destructive or something that needs to be examined as a potential positive thing, right? Where being community minded and being polite or being civil or following various rules of the social contract is often good, but is sometimes bad. Mike does not want to fight back or defend himself against Boyd because he thinks like, well, he doesn't mean anything by it. He's just, I just want to get through my day, and Boyd just steps on him and treats him like shit all the time. And so obviously the way that he fights back with him being murder is not great, but he's asserting himself in a way that is sort of understandable, and under a scenario that is maybe more controlled and not completely unhinged by Gideon, the desire to be treated with respect is not in itself bad, right? And so at the same time, you have Linda, who is maybe in the closet, or maybe it personally hasn't fully figured out what her sexuality is. If she had figured it, if she had been able to accept her inner desires under less supernatural circumstances, she might have been able to have like a frank conversation, or like a much more warm interaction with this person that I'm sure on some level that she does love, rather than just, tear this Band-Aid off being like, no, actually my fiance, this ain't happening.
Also, it's 2008. It's the last year of the Bush years. Like, coming out is like a bit more of a taboo thing than it is now, things have come a long way since 2008. And especially like if you're a young person around then, especially if you're like living on a ranch,
but just like the idea that you have
Brokeback Mountain came out 3 years prior. We're not that far into it yet.
But I like the idea where like the power of Gideon is that Gideon lets you accept that the things that you want, but also strips away the parts of you that help you to temper those desires into something that's not destructive to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I know, of course, now we're just throwing a bunch of fucking thematic stuff out here.
No, I love it.
That helps, I think, to make him a character rather than just a head.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you could even argue that, like, maybe Jessica as a part, she sees this power of hers as a party trick, it's something that her aunt shows off about her that makes her kind of uncomfortable. And then people use it to exploit her. So it's like, I could understand her, the desire is to push people away from her and to not be a people pleaser about it, and that involves, being selfish.
On that thought, we should have Jessica, while she's entranced, be the one that kills Flavia for Gideon. Since Flavia's
resentment,
like this resentment comes to the surface. Maybe even like Gideon's like he does his roasting of everyone. He's like, oh, your blood is all unworthy of me, Jessica, you pick, since I can't even pick because everyone's so disgusting, who should be the first one to be sacrificed? And Jessica says Flavia. And that's sort of
that would be brutal.
Her hidden desire coming up, like, you've exploited me,
right. And if one of her desires is that she feels that she's not treated like an adult, then the parent figure who most maybe infantilizes her is a very natural sort of target for that resentment.
Absolutely. And she's sort of freeing herself from being under her thumb,
And at the end of the movie, everyone feels very, very bad.
Yeah.
Well, and we could make it that like Flavia doesn't die fully, or like what she was saved by the power of love. But I think it would also it's not only does, we could have it be that maybe Flavia is Jessica's only living relative. And maybe it's like, this ranch is going to be your responsibility someday. So maybe you have to come and, like it's this pressure. It's, she should be thankful for it. But, in the housing crisis, like, oh, this just lands in your lap and you're like not stoked. Like, I feel like there could be a lot of emotional stuff attached to like the home and the ranch and like what, the guest house, it feels very like, I don't know, heavy.
Yeah, we could also have Flavia be like maybe really religious, which if we're playing with the gay undertones, like she's very conservative, religious, and is one of the things holding Jessica back, from being super gay.
It's interesting, those like, the timing of it, I happened to have graduated high school in 2007. So I went right into college. And then immediately the economy collapsed. And there was a lot of, I was fortunate enough that my family could still afford to finish putting me through college. But like, it was the kind of thing where like, it was this sort of limbo where you're like, okay, well, as soon as we get out of here, whatever it is that we're studying, there's not going to be any work. We're going to get out of here. We're all just going to move back home with our parents. And that's what we did for those of us who were fortunate enough to be able to do that. And so I think maybe the idea that like Jessica was somebody who thought that she had her own future planned. And because like maybe, all right, all of the family's investments fall apart and the job that she was going to have to work herself through college, disappeared. And so she had to drop out of school and go back to work on the family farm, which was never what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
And the thing that she could do to kind of, her most valuable skill is this weird magic she can do that she doesn't want to do because it makes her uncomfortable, or maybe her family's religious feelings make it uncomfortable, or she doesn't want to be exploited for it, or I'm in the weeds now.
No,
but
I agree. I feel like, and it calls into question, like, what is selfish in this situation for her? You know, like, is it selfish to refuse to find potentially treasure, like literal fucking treasure that could like save you, that could like secure your future and the future of your family? And like, if you don't want to do that because it's against your morals, is that selfish, or is it selfish of them to demand it of you? You know, like, I think that there's a lot of stuff that could be said about like legacies and family lines and stuff along that path.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of an arc for Jessica where, like, at the beginning we think like, oh, she's just like this innocent, awkward, quiet girl. And as it goes on, we realize there is so much rage and resentment that she's sort of shoved down inside her that then Gideon helps to unleash. And I think that goes along with what you were saying about the themes of, like, you know, looking out for yourself, but not, like, releasing your desires, but not being destructive towards other people. And she's been keeping all this stuff inside because she doesn't want to be destructive. And then Gideon sort of swings her to the other side. And this movie is about her finding that balance of like advocating for herself and being a little bit selfish, but not, you know, necessarily killing people over it, you know? I think that's an interesting arc to our sort of main character, you know?
I just think it's funny because I was poking fun of like, oh, well, Dalton has unsurprisingly suggested that we make this more gay. And I realized that my equivalent of that is having all stories be somehow about like the ethics of ambition or
economic crises.
Well, Kendra introduced the economic portion to this one. That was actually not on me this time. But yeah, everything has to be about capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. Capitalism is always the bad guy. This is just a story about what happens when you start dating a much older, much more toxic man, and you have a lot of lessons that you're about to learn. And maybe they're not all good, but you learn them and then you move on. It's fine, you know, and then you get a girlfriend. That's what this is really about. It's about finding your way.
This is also the Jenny Halsey story, actually.
And that's the thing, is that this movie fits perfectly into our dark universe because it's about capitalism is the bad guy and homosexuality is the good guy. And at the end of the day, homosexuality triumphs over capitalism every time.
Love that.
But it does also, I think this fits perfectly in our dark universe because it's so small scale. It is just a single ranch. It is just what is happening in these people's lives.
There's no conflict with any of our existing lore.
So I think we can greenlight this to be part of the dark universe.
Fuck yeah. I think let's go.
Let's lock it in.
It's alive! In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God.
Kendra, thank you so much. This was a wonderful pitch. We ended up basically taking these same plot points of a movie none of us liked and turning it into something way too thematically dense for us to probably fit in one movie, but a very rich text here.
Listen, we just got to double the length and tighten up some of those edits and we'll be fine.
Double the length of this movie is just the length of a normal movie now.
Dylan will write some of his patented 20-page dialogue scenes that communicate all of these character dynamics.
A lot of like really intense longing glances.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
I also want to thank you, Kendra, for your recent wonderful contribution to the dark universe at large, which is we can now announce to any of you who haven't already found it on our Threadless page that Kendra has designed a dope fucking t-shirt, the very first Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe related t-shirt that we can legally sell.
Yay!
It is a shirt with Kendra's rendering of a certain wolf woman and the phrase, literally eat the rich.
Yes. And again, capitalism is the villain. Homosexuality is the hero.
No room for gay capitalists here.
Yes.
That's right.
Rainbow capitalism, not welcome.
And you can now reflect that subtly on your own werewolf t-shirt by going to, is it darkuniversepod.threadless?
That sounds right to me.
It is darkuniversepod.threadless.com.
All right,
I'm looking at it right this very second.
That's on darkuniversepod.threadless.com. And when you go to that, you will find exactly one shirt design on it, and it will be that one. Unless you're listening later and we've decided to make more. If you think we should make more, please buy this one.
And maybe because it's threadless, you'll be able to get it on a phone case or a mug or something.
A button.
It would look really good on a kid's t-shirt.
I'm planning to get one for my little baby son.
There you go.
That'll be pretty cool. Send him to daycare with a t-shirt of a woman with pointy teeth and blood dripping down her lips that says literally eat the rich.
Hell yeah.
See how that goes.
It's okay. None of them can read.
So you can go grab that right now. And Kendra, what else do you have to plug?
Oh my God. I am at Kendra W. Candra on all socials. You can also just Google my name, Kendra Wells, and I'm sure something will come up. Probably a very outdated author photo. I am currently being heavily supported by my Patreon, which is patreon.com/KendraWCanDraw.
Hell yeah.
And we're always welcoming new people. I draw some sexy things on the $10 tier every month that people get to vote on. It's very fun.
See some cool fantasy smut.
That's right. Elf titties, baby.
Speaking of cool fantasy smut, I don't know if everybody who listens here is aware of Real Hero shit, but you should pitch that at them because I think that it would be in the wheelhouse of many of our listeners.
Our fans would definitely love Real Hero shit. Yes.
Oh, I will. I sure hope so. Real Hero shit is a medieval fantasy ongoing story by yours truly. It's published through Iron Circus Comics. The first volume is available for purchase in both ebook and paperback on the Iron Circus store or wherever fine books are sold. And there is a sequel coming out sooner than you might think and sooner than maybe I'm prepared for, but that's fine. And it's not to horn my own toot here, but it is the best comic work I think I've done in my career, and I'm very, very proud of it.
Woo!
So I'm really, really excited for it to come out.
Yes, if you like fantasy that is properly horny.
Yes.
And also,
I should talk about what the book's about, I guess. It's like a medieval fantasy. There's 4 idiots who are going on a journey together, and one of which is the crown prince of the country. He is a very spoiled, kind of stupid playboy, and he is also the only person in the world, presumably, who has lavender purple skin and huge horns coming out of his forehead. And nobody knows why, and you're not really allowed to talk about it. So it's about their little adventures, and they go and try to do some good and make some coin and freelance in a very hostile environment to be existing in, which is something that I'm sure none of us can relate to at all.
Of course not.
I'm a big fan of this book. It is super funny, and the romance is great, and it also just is a great looking comic book. Or graphic novel. And
you can call it a comic book.
It's a great looking comic book. And I'm so excited for the next volume.
Hell yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. As usual, you can find us at patreon.com/Dylan and Dalton. And in 2 weeks, we will be back, and Dylan will be pitching his take on cat people for our mainline Dark Universe entries. And so come back for that. Find us on Patreon and on social media at Dark Universe Pod. Kendra, thank you so much for pitching this wonderful version of The Thing That Couldn't Die. And until next time,
stay afraid of the Dark Universe.